Hello and welcome to the Quantum Leap Podcast's interview with Stewart Bakula. This is a very special interview for me because when Heather and I first started the Quantum Leap Podcast, one of the goals was to have Mr. Bakula on the show. I didn't know if this would really happen, but I'm so glad that it did. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Bakula for being on the show. Such a nice guy to do this for us. I really appreciate it. And also a very special thanks to JD Schwartz for helping us arrange all this. If this is the first time you're listening to something from the Quantum Leap Podcast, welcome. What we do is we're going through the entire series of Quantum Leap, one episode at a time. We recap it, we review it, we discuss all the topics that were raised in the episode, and just have a good time talking about Quantum Leap. So if that sounds good to you, check us out at quantumleappodcast.com and on iTunes. And now, sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Stewart Bakula. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you. All is good.
Can you tell me how you got involved in Quantum Leap?
You know, it was a weird time. It was kind of an odd circumstance. I was in New York doing a show on Broadway, and I decided it was time to leave the show. And everybody was saying, "What are you, nuts? It's a hit show? Why would you leave it?" And I said, "No, it's time to go back to L.A." And so I left the show, and 4 weeks later, I got this audition to go in and meet Don Bellisario and read this thing. And they just sent me a couple scenes from it. And they look good. And that just led to one thing after another. And ironically, that's the last two people that I was up against for the role were from New York. So they flew them in from New York. So I guess maybe if I'd stayed in New York, I still would have gotten the show. It's hard to say, but sometimes it's just better to be in the room, wherever the producers are. So that was it. It was just a kind of a twist of fate. If I'd stayed in that show, I wouldn't have gotten it. So,
wow.
Just kind of fortune. When
you got the role of Sam Beckett, did you think it would be as big of a part as it ended up being?
No, I don't think I honestly, I don't think I had any kind of clarity about that at all. I was kind of overwhelmed by just being in the show and getting the pilot, the 2-hour pilot, and being in it with Dean and Don Bellisario and NBC, and it was a huge deal at the time. Brandon Tartikoff and at the network and the Universal Studios, and I was just more focused on trying to see how I could deliver, as best. It wasn't, you don't tend to think about the future very often. You just kind of try to do the best you can while you've got something, and so I was just, completely focused on that. I had no idea about the parameters, the possibilities that the show could be, because I don't think anybody really did at that point. They were just kind of, Don had sold this idea, and the story is always that he was in the room with Brandon Tartikoff, and Brandon said, I want you to do a series about the Silver Surfer. and Don said, yeah, okay, that's interesting, but how about this idea instead? And he pitched him Quantum Leap, and Brandon said, yeah, go make that. So that with a lot of support from Terry McCluggage, Gary Hart at Universal. They were real champions of the show, and we were kind of off. But the idea, the parameters of it, and it could have the longevity and the kind of worldwide effect that's been associated with the show, and how it's just been received everywhere, and how it still plays so well, and people still respond to it. That's something that's just really been kind of, I don't think there's any way to, predict those kind of things, but what are we coming up on,
26? Yeah.
Yeah. Since we hit the air, and it's something I'm just so proud to have been a part of. And it always, whenever I'm reminded of it or people talk about it, it's always with such good feeling that I feel, and they, associated with the show. It's just been a great, wonderful, part of my career anyway. And so many other people that worked on the show, the actors, the creative people, the designers, the writers, everybody's just really had it was a great association, all things around. CCH Boundaries on NCIS with me, she did an episode, and a couple of years ago I did The Last Five Designing Women, and Terry Hatcher and Marcia Cross had both done episodes, a long time ago, and just a lot of those kind of stories and great crew people that we worked with and still bump into. It was a really good, talented group.
Do you think you're going to have more people that you worked with on Quantum Leap on NCIS New Orleans?
Oh, I have no idea. It it was a kind of a fluke that it worked out that Dean could come on, which was, it's always so great to see him and be around him. And, you know, I worked with a lot of actors on that show. You know, I can't even count up how many actors, but I was talking to CCH about it the other day, and, you know, just we figure, you know, you start doing series television, you end up working with thousands of actors over the course of your career if you're lucky. And there were lots of great ones on that show, and a lot of great actors that went on to, you know, continue to be great actors and work in the business. So hopefully, listen, we've been extremely lucky to have a wonderful group of guest actors come down this year to New Orleans to work. So I hope that, you know, we can get more and more to come down.
When Dean was on the show, was it like old times?
Yeah, you know, he was just there for a day, really. So I think he was there the day before, and we shot us all morning, and then I think he got on a plane and left later that night. I can't remember if he was there that night or not. I was still working. He left. And we had a whole another day of shooting to do, and then he was gone. But yeah, I mean, you know, we're kind of shorthand. You know, we know each other so well, and we have such fond, strong memories and history together. And Ginny Whitmore directed that episode, so that kind of compounded the emotional aspect of the day for all three of us, and it was pretty remarkable. It was great seeing them. A
lot of people in the fan community were very excited about that episode.
Yeah, it was pretty, you know, just another. All the days with Dean are pretty remarkable, but that's one I'll never forget, that one for sure.
Do you remember like a specific point while you were filming Quantum Leap when you realized you had a hit on your hands and you were going to be there for a while?
Never. We never had that kind of security. In retrospect, everybody looks back and says, you were such a big hit. And we really weren't a big hit. We were marginal. I think we had 6 time slots in the course of the 4.5 seasons. We barely got out of the first 9 episodes in our first half order. We were on the chopping block really at episode 6, and that's the Driving Miss Daisy episode really kind of saved the show and put the show on the map and kept us around for for a full season. And that's really where we got going. But, you know, we were in a really tough time slot. I think it was China Beach and Wise Guy. Was that Ken's show? I think that's where we started on Wednesday nights, although I think we might have started on another night. We premiered against Moses, you know. I mean, it was just, you know, it was definitely stacked against us for a while, and we slowly kind of our fan base just kind of grew and supported and really forced the issue with the network. There was a time, I forget which season it was. I think it was after Brandon had left NBC, and Warren Littlefield was there, and they did a whole commercial where he was sitting at his desk and they poured thousands of letters on top of it back when people wrote letters, you know, and that was a promo for our show, you know. Viewers for quality television were crazy about us and promoted us all the time. We were always, you know, I never felt comfortable. Maybe between the season 2 and 3, maybe we felt like we were going to, you know, come back. I think when we kind of started winning our time slot, then we started to feel pretty good, but it was always touch and go.
Was it rough on you having to be in every scene pretty much for the whole series?
It was. You know, I can't deny that. It was very physically demanding. It was emotionally demanding. It was certainly time demanding. It was crazy how much time we spent. Back then, there was less care for the crews and less. I certainly had less protection in terms of my contract than I would. I just didn't. I was young. I didn't really take care of myself that much in terms of the workload and things. So I was, you just kind of sink your teeth in and you say, well, you know, you look at it. I always looked at it as a marathon, and, you know, you just had to pick up and move from episode to episode. And I always had a different new cast I had to learn every week, you know, and every 7 or 8 days or 9 or 10 went back then. And that was, you know, wonderful, but it was also, you know, it added extra stress and challenges, and, you know, every group was different, and you had, you know, weeks that were lovely, workable, fantastic, and then you had weeks where, you know, it was like, you know, it was a struggle. And so, you know, I got through it. I got through it in one piece. I had great help from Diamond Farnsworth, and the stunt community kept me alive and set up stuff so that I could do a lot but also be safe. And, you know, I had a few minor things go wrong, but, you know, it was a lot physical stuff, and along with the long hours. So I certainly couldn't do that now, but it was a challenge. But everybody kind of was in the same. Every department was challenged. Everybody was challenged creatively, and it just made for a really energetic kind of environment where we kind of picked each other up and just kept on going on, and everybody believed in the show, and it was never boring because we were making these little mini period movies really every 8 to 10 days, and that was always exciting, and we never knew what was going to happen to me, what my challenges were going to be in terms of skills I would have to learn or pretend to know, and so that certainly kept me on my toes. So it flew by, I have to say. It was never, you were never sitting there saying, oh my gosh, not another courtroom scene or something. We never had anything, nothing ever repeated except a couple of sets. So it was unique in that sense, and happily, I survived. I only worked with, one actor repeatedly. Dean only had to work with me. Everybody else was a new actor all the time.
I have the great opportunity of interviewing your co-stars every time we do a new episode.
Yeah.
Without fail, they always make it clear that you are one of the nicest, most generous, giving people they've ever worked with. Is that a conscious thing that you do, or is it just you're just a great guy?
Well, first of all, again, I'm in this business because I like actors. I like being around actors. I like being an actor and working on scenes and creating emotional moments and creating scenes and episodes that work, that are moving, that are thought-provoking, that are exciting, that are funny, all of those things. I love that aspect of it. So I'm a fan of actors, so it starts there. And I also realized early on, I didn't do a lot of guesting in the beginning of my career, but I did enough of it to know what it's like to be a guest. And I also, because of the nature of Quantum being that it was just Dean and myself, and he never had to work with anybody else except me, that the episodes were really, and I feel this way, what I'm doing right now too on NCIS, is that the episodes are only ultimately as good as your guests that come on. And the best way to have success for your guests is for them to feel comfortable, for them to feel important, for them to feel like they have a voice, that they have an opinion, that we can work together and create something together. And so that's just always been my feeling. It's just you could say that it's selfish, that the better the guests are, the happier they are, the better our work's going to be, because it's hard to come in and say hi, hello, and you've got a romantic scene with somebody, and you have to climb into bed with them, and you've met them 5 minutes earlier. It's just it's goofy what we do sometimes. So, and there's no planning. It's not like, every time you can always meet somebody and work with them for 5 days before you have to do any intense kind of emotional thing. Sometimes the hardest scene in the episode is the first one you shoot. So it's always been, I like what we do. I like working on a set. I like the teamwork. I like it to be loose and people to have a good time, because I don't understand why you wouldn't have a good time in our business. There's no, I always hear the stories about directors or people that like to have tension and upset and people intrigued. And I just think that's, everybody can do whatever they want to do and create all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's, we're creating roles, we're creating fiction, and yes, we want to be believable and real and everything, but that's our job, is to do that. And while we're here working for all these hours, they might as well be pleasant. So that's just kind of my overall philosophy. And there's so many great actors that I've worked with and that are wonderful, lovely, engaging, interesting people, and they're actors, and I'm one too. So it's never been, it's never been a challenge or like a goal of mine. It's just how I feel like we can all get the best make the most of our days, get the work done quickly and beautifully, and go home.
You mentioned that it could be emotionally difficult, and I think that's probably some of the best parts of Quantum Leap, is when the emotion was there and those moments like in MIA and the leap home. And how much of yourself do you have to put into the character of Sam Beckett when you were doing it?
Well, you always pull from your life and your experiences, and certainly I wasn't able to pull from being a child genius and going to MIT and having all of that stuff. But I'm from the Midwest. I understand farmers. I understand the Midwest kind of mentality about treating people and how they feel about their neighbors. And so I used a lot of that. There's a certain naivete that Sam Beckett had that I could relate to, and I brought in that also. But, the emotion really, in my opinion, comes from what's in a script. And we had the good fortune of having a lot of wonderful scripts that had great emotional moments in them. And I can say without, there are very few scripts. There were many times when I'd read a script that would show up and I'd be moved to tears, and not just in year 1, but in year 5. And that's just, good writing. And then, Dean was always so great with stuff and surprising, and you never really quite knew where he was going to come from. The first Jimmy episode when he was talking about his sister in the scene, and he just, those moments were on the page, and they were successful on the page, and our job was to just, let them happen, and we were, so lucky to have Don, and we had a ton of great writers on the show, but Don Belisario he's a big-hearted, rough and tumble Italian guy that wants everybody to think that he's tough, and he can be. Let's just put it that way. But at the core of it, all the relationship stuff between Sam and Al, that's Don. That's a part of him that really comes through. It's not just in our series; it's in Magnum and all. A lot of his great stuff that he really explored those relationships, and they worked.
What are some of the big moments that stick out in your memory for Sam Beckett?
Well, certainly, gosh, there's so many. I couldn't even begin. But so, the lead poem is always, one of my favorites, because that was just, and I got to play my father in it, and got to sing Imagine in it, and then the whole relationship with my brother that carried over to MIA. Those were two just remarkable back-to-back episodes. The whole Oswald, that 2-hour piece was fantastic, and La Mancha was wonderful, and the last episode was great. The Jimmy episode, again, we kept creating these interesting situations that Sam would get into, and they just, it really was kind of the perfect scenario, and it could have gone on and on. Quantum Leap could have been like, it could have easily been Doctor Who. It could have been Dr. Beckett, and it could have been, I could have gotten tired after a certain amount. I could have put a new guy in there and a new Al in there, and it could have just gone on because the premise of the show is perfect, in that, what's it like to be walking somebody else's shoes? And it's as simple as that. And what would you do if you could do something over again?
So many people, when they talk about Quantum Leap today, they always are hoping for more Quantum Leap. Do you think there will be eventually a reboot or a reimagining of Quantum Leap?
Oh, somebody will do it, yeah. They'll figure it out. It's just, whether it's Don that does it or somebody. I'm sure they will, because our town of Hollywood is famous for reimagining, old ideas. There are only so many new ideas anyway. So it'll happen. It'll happen at some point. It's been a troubled road so far with that, but somebody will figure it out.
Yeah, it's almost surprising that it hasn't happened yet.
Oh, it's very surprising. But last time I talked to Don, he said, yeah, everybody wants me to write Magnum. They want to write in the Magnum movie. They want me to write the Quantum Leap movie. And, he's got a lot going on in his life, and that's not necessarily a priority for him. So
we're just grateful for what we had, 5 seasons. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Talking about the leap home and playing your dad, could you tell me what that was like, playing opposite yourself and having to do all the makeup and the technical part of it?
Well, it was grueling. It was a grueling experience, mainly because just back then the prosthetics and the system that existed to do age and makeup and everything just took a really long time. So I started, the first time we did it, I went into makeup at 11 o'clock. I think I went to Jerry's house at 11 o'clock at night, Jerry Quist, and he put it on from 11 till, I went into work at 7:30 and in the morning and worked until lunch. Then we took it off, and then I shot the rest of the day. I shot my side of those scenes. So it was complicated. And then Mike Mills came in, and then he was doing it, but we'd go to the trailer at whatever time in the middle of the night. I think the last couple, it almost always took, though, about 8 hours. So it was arduous. And the last time I did it, I was actually directing the episode also, and it was insane.
Were they able to use the same makeup again when you reprised the role of your dad in that episode, Promised Land?
No. Well, it was the same molds, but no, every time you take that, it's a one-time makeup. So I think I had 7 different appliance pieces on my face and a wig and so, a bald cap and a hairpiece after that. And so those all, once you're done with that, you throw those away. We kept the hairpiece, I think, but
at least they kept the molds.
Start all over again. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Was that your decision to bring back your dad in that episode, or did they write that?
No, that was in the script.
Okay.
That was the script that they wrote.
How did you feel about directing those 3 episodes of Quantum Leap?
Oh, I had a ball. Yeah, I had a ball. Loved it. Had a great time. I loved just working with the actors and being able to talk to the actors in a different way than you're able to when you're acting with a director. So it's really, it was very enjoyable. It was a protected kind of environment because I knew everybody, I knew everybody's strengths and everybody's weaknesses, and I knew what, I just tell people to go do their thing, and it worked out great. The world, again, back then, there was no video playback. You just watched it on a monitor, and so they had to rig up an old VHS deck and attach that somehow to the top of the monitor, and then record that, and then put it on a tape, and I could watch it back if I wanted to, and take it home. It was, it was a big Magilla back then, so it's way different now, certainly. But back then it was a little bit of a challenge, but it worked out. I haven't looked at any of those in a while, but I'm pretty proud of what I did with them, and we had some really, really tough days, and we made them, so it was good.
Did you ever get the urge to direct on Enterprise?
Not really. I mean, I probably would have eventually, but that was an interesting time, and there was so much technical stuff, and I was just kind of getting familiar with, all of the technology that was already in place, because that was a well-oiled machine, already just coming off of Voyager, and they've had the movies going, and it was just, so I was kind of behind in terms of, I wasn't with they had their effects people and everything that had been doing it for 15 years. So there was a lot of educating that needed to be done, and we had a bunch of good directors, and I didn't actually pursue it in that show at all, and although I probably would have down the line.
Oh, cool. For Quantum Leap, did most of the directors, did you enjoy working with them? Were there any that just didn't get the character or the show while you were working on them?
No, we really, I finally, after the first couple of years, I said to Don, it's really hard for me to get through the year. And if you wouldn't mind and the network would be okay, I'd like to just limit the number of directors we have so that the people that came would know the show. That was the hardest part, was when a new director came in and he didn't know how we did the mirror shots. He didn't know how we did the leaps in and out and the bringing Dean in and out, because it was, again, way before any of the technology from today. So it was all little kind of tricks, but they took time. And I just said, because I'm there every second of it, and the people, once they know how to do it, then they get in and they do it right. It's quick, and they know how to do it, and we're moving along, as opposed to, kind of relearning it for new directors. And not to say that we didn't have some new directors that came along, but for the most part, I said pretty much after season 2, I just said, you gotta help me out here, because it's exhausting to help directors and new people that hadn't directed before. Whatever. I said, oh my gosh, they haven't directed before, and they're directing our show, and I ended up having to do a lot, and it was fine, and I don't mind working that way sometimes, but over the course of a year, it just took a huge extra toll on me energy-wise, and I just, so we kind of got a stable of directors that were pretty, consistent, and they liked doing the show, and we could kind of rotate them, and it was like, okay, here comes Whitmore, here comes Inberg, here comes, different people, Joe, and all. So we would just have kind of a bunch of regulars, and then everybody was comfortable.
That's good. So towards the end of the series, it was probably getting almost like clockwork and better for you.
Well, no, the problem was we never had, because every episode, we didn't have any repeating anything. So every episode started from scratch. It was a new year, a new look, all different cars. Every department had to figure out what's the right wardrobe, what's the right signage, what's the right, and the script was brand new. There was no carryover. There wasn't anybody else except Dean and myself. You had to recast and get new people, and so it was never clockwork. It was never clockwork. It was always a challenge, because there was just nothing repeated. We had the sets where back home, if you will, in our workspace, where we had some leftover, we had all of our scientific stuff, the chamber and all those kinds of things. But we only went there, I think, maybe twice, maybe 3 times, and that was it. So those were our standing sets. We didn't have anything else. So everything was new. You couldn't go in and flip on the switches and say, here we are back in the courtroom. And we're lit. It's just like, no, everyone, we had to kind of reimagine, redo, just create from scratch.
I wanted to ask you about when you were playing Sam Beckett and when you would leap into a new leapee every episode. It seemed to us while we're watching it that you take on certain personality traits of the leapee. In your mind, when you were doing that, if you were doing that, how much of the leapee were you adding to the character of Sam Beckett? And did that make for almost a different character every episode for you?
I think that most of that was in the imagination of the audience, which is just fine. I started making conscious choices in about year 3 that I would start letting the journey affect Sam Beckett on more of a cellular level than just an external level. And because it was just something that I thought was interesting, and Don didn't object to it, and we didn't even really talk about it. I just started doing it, certainly, and I forget what season Oswald was. That was the beginning of 3 or 4, but those kind of episodes just were kind of so deeply troubling and emotional. And when we did the episode in the shot theater, I think, and stuff, I just felt like we could take the license, certainly in the sci-fi genre, to start letting some of these experiences start to kind of, and the time travel and the molecular rearranging and everything. I just thought it'd be interesting if we touched on that a little bit. So I started laying stuff in. It was fun to do. It was different things, the pregnancy episode, things like that, where I just took it a little bit further than, say, what I would have done in the first 15 episodes, and it was I like to do things like that if it's correct, when it feels right to me. Then I think it's fun for people who are watching the show. May not be, and I don't talk about it when I'm doing it. It's not like, here's what I'm going to do this year on the show. You let stuff sink in, and you let people, because now that everything can be watched over and over and over again. And I felt the same way about Enterprise and, things that I've done that have been around for a while. Even men of a certain age, you start layering your part. That's what we do as actors. You start building and trying to generate something that's alive and breathing as a character. And so I just started pushing those things in there. And I did it for me, for the, it's little cherries for the fans, and people that get it, people that don't, it's okay.
Do you think the writers pick up on what you're doing and write towards that more?
I don't know. I never talked to any of them about it. I just took what they gave me, and then if there was something that felt right to do, then I went and did it. And I'd find that quite often I just find it on the, while we were shooting it. Just as I do, on NCIS here or whatever, you'll be in a scene to say, I wonder what would happen if I, grab that guy's arm here or whatever it is, and it changed the whole scene. So, the whole scene. And so, I don't think they never wrote anything in a script that said anything to that nature.
Oh, okay.
But there was definitely an energy and a vibe about what we were doing, and I just took what they wrote and pushed it a little bit further.
I have a little bit of a technical question. I spoke with Tommy Thompson and I spoke with Mr. Belisario.
Yeah.
about like the science of quantum leap. And there, from what I understand, there was no hard rules. But what is your take on like if your body was actually there, or if it was just your personality and different things like that?
Well, that's like impossible. My best memories of all this were people writing us letters and saying, "You've broken the rules of time travel." That was my favorite part of the whole thing. Steven Spielberg established these rules, and you guys have changed them. And that's always made me laugh. But I like Don's idea about your life is a circle, a string, and if you ball it up and different parts of the string touch each other, you can move from one to the other. I believe that we're energy, so energy can be moved and shaped and twisted around. So, and what we perceive of our realities around us is certainly something that is we can imagine any way we want to, and we look at things that we think are something at the table, but we know that it's made up of cells and energy, and so I like to feel that as that was also an evolving thing, that we took a convention that the character's appearance didn't shift, but the person inside, the essence of the person was not there anymore. That the essence of Sam Beckett was in that person for that amount of time. The energy, my spirit was in that person, and their spirit was back in my body. So that's how I always looked at it.
Very cool. Very cool. The episode, The Leap Back, where you leap back to Project Quantum Leap and you get your memories back and find out you're married.
Yeah.
Was that Sam Beckett more of what Sam Beckett really was like without the Swiss cheese?
I always felt that I had that like a moment of clarity, like you came up for air and you saw everything, and then I got pulled back into it again, and it was all gone again, basically. Again, that was the conceit of the script, that I had no memory of being back there and her feelings about me, and that we were married, et cetera, and that she understood that and forgave that, and it allowed Sam to be a free agent, basically, and just go into each experience fresh. Probably if it was redone in this day and age, there wouldn't be a wife back home, so there wouldn't be any kind of potential. Al wouldn't have to be thinking in his head, "Oh my gosh, Sam, he's got a wife back there." But it would probably be a little looser than it was back then. But it worked. It was interesting. It was an interesting choice. Certainly, I don't think it was something they thought about when they created the show. It just kind of said, well, what happens if he went back and the thing, and then he had to leave his wife to go back and save Al or whatever it was, and it was quick. It was a quick little glimpse of his world, and then we were gone because the audience didn't really want to be back there. They wanted to be, I always say the audience wants to believe that Sam's still out there leaping around.
Mirror Image, what did you think of it, and how was it different when it aired from when you read the script and filmed it? Because I understand there was alternate endings and they didn't come up with the final title card until a couple days before it aired.
Well, I've said this many times, but it was the greatest piece of writing that we did on the whole show, short of the creating the show, because it served 5 different purposes. It was, if we got renewed, if we got canceled forever, if we were going to make a movie of the week, if there was going to be a feature film. So Don had to fulfill all of these. Ideally, he was trying to, serve a bunch of different masters and give the show all these possibilities instead of it's the last show. So, because we didn't know when we shot it, and whenever I look at it or see it or talk to somebody, I think it's genius, because it was such a bizarre, abstract kind of journey, trip back memory, whatever memory lane would be for Sam. With all these different characters that we'd seen, but in a different situation. It was pretty trippy, and God and Bruce McGill, just all kinds of stuff going on. And I just thought it was so much fun to shoot. Jimmy Whitmore shot that episode. Obviously, it was Don's family's bar recreated down, within an inch of its life, into the pictures and the pig knuckles on the bar. And his family came in and were just, moved to tears when they walked in to see it. And always, we had a feeling it was going to be the last episode, so it was extremely emotional. And outside of shooting, it's always hard when it's like closing night on a Broadway show or something. It's very hard to get through the show because you've been through so much and you've had so many experiences. And it was weird. It was like the rap party that year was weird because we were like, is this really a rap party? Is it a rap party? Or it was extremely difficult. And yet I think the fact that people still talk about it, some people didn't like it, some people, hardly anybody. You can never find any show where everybody says, oh, that was the best last episode ever. Everybody's always unhappy in some way, shape, or form. And I still am intrigued and puzzled and delighted by the whole episode and the fact that we're still talking about what did it mean and who was that and was that God and who was it Bruce Willis? All of those things. It's like, great, that's good. Everybody's talking about it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be all spelled out all the time. So I loved it. Great scenes in it, great scenes with Dean at the end. It was just, and then you had the card at the end, all of that stuff. And so that was the last episode. It's crazy.
One of the greatest parts probably of the series is when Sam goes back and changes Al's timeline with Beth. How do you think that would have affected season 6 if we would have gotten it?
I don't know. I mean, I think, I don't know. Certainly, that changing that he had a wife and kids and everything doesn't mean that he still would have. That makes sense. Okay. It still could have been part of his life and his history and his story, but it doesn't mean that he didn't, wasn't got divorced or we don't know. We changed that moment. I'm not sure that it meant, I know it said that, now, basically Al lived happily ever after.
Right.
And Beckett never made it home and everything. So I don't know I don't know how he would have worked out. We never talked about it, to be quite honest.
And finally, before we go, is there anything you'd like to say to all the leapers that are listening?
No, just, it's been a lot of great years and sharing this journey with everybody. And I'm always delighted that new people find it. And still so many people talk about watching Quantum Leap with their family. And that's always, I think, a great, it's a sign of the times back then, but certainly it always makes me happy that people, I watch this every Sunday with my dad, or, we all sat around the TV and watched it. No, because people don't do that anymore. So very seldom anyway. And so it's a miraculous journey that we're still around and all over the planet and well received and, something I'm proud of. And, the fans have been awesome for many, many years and we keep getting new ones.
Thank you so much.
You got it.